Welcome to the Resilient Butterfly Podcast. My goal is to share inspiring stories of healing and recovery through many diverse approaches and models. Our guests bring incredible lived experiences, insights, and/or professional expertise, each with their own unique path. While we highlight and celebrate these stories, our intention is to inform, inspire, and demonstrate resilience and creativity. This podcast does not endorse any one approach. We believe there is more than one way to heal, and we're here to showcase the resilience and possibilities that exist. Welcome to Resilient Butterfly. We're the podcast exploring the journeys of healing, resilience, and the transformation that can emerge from life's most difficult moments. I'm your host, Pam Feinberg-Rifkin. Today, we're honored to welcome a guest whose work has shaped the modern understanding of grief in profound and compassionate ways. Thomas Attig is an applied philosopher, a pioneering voice in grief studies, and a lifelong teacher of what it means to relearn the world after loss. Tom is the author of How We Grieve, Relearning the World, The Art of Grief, Catching Your Breath in Grief, and his newest collection, Seeking Wisdom in Death's Shadows, published by Oxford University Press. Across decades of listening, reflection, and research, Tom has illuminated the ways grief can take our breath away, how it can feel like we're caught in a storm, lost in fog, or crushed beneath what feels unbearable, and yet how within that brokenness we can still discover the strength, wisdom, and resilience needed to go on. In this conversation, we'll explore Tom's signature idea of grieving as relearning how to live in the world, why philosophy has so much to offer mourners and caregivers, and how we can find steady ground when everything familiar has changed. Tom brings clarity, warmth, and an unflinching presence to sensitive topics, and I'm truly grateful to share this space with him today. So, take a breath, settle in, and join us as we seek wisdom together in the shadows of loss. Thomas, thank you for coming to Resilient Butterfly. I'm so glad, and I'm going to call you Tom, if that's okay. And this is a very deep topic, obviously, and many people in our culture, and many other cultures as well, stay away from it because it is so scary, I guess, for lack of better words that I could say. So in the death of a loved one, you had said it takes your breath away. What does that mean philosophically and emotionally?
I think it's rather descriptive of a lot of people's experiences. They find themselves squeezed by the experience, as if something too heavy has fallen on their shoulders, or as if someone had punched them in the gut, and they're really struggling to take full breaths. They're sobbing, they're sighing. In general, I think the metaphor is for being hit by something far harder than you thought it was going to be until it happened. And it's astonishing, and it's overwhelming, and it's profoundly painful.
So in someone thinking that they're going to prepare for whatever that may be at a time, you know, maybe someone knows that someone is dying and they're going to try to prepare for that. Does that lessen that punch in the gut or that heavy feeling?
It's going to hit hard no matter what. But it seems to me that if people know that someone is dying and they're both conscious and able to have discussions, it can help to talk about what's coming and express hopes for one another and love for one another and so on. And that will temper the pain, but I don't think there's any avoiding the heartache that comes with a dear person dying.
Sure.
Even if there's relief from a kind of a terrible physical suffering before the death, it's still hard to let go of what we do when people are dying often is we tend to their breath. And we watch to see if it's still there and how strong it is and how intermittent it might be, and so on. And as we're talking and observing someone who's dying, we talk amongst ourselves about doesn't seem to be breathing so well. It's probably in some of his last breaths. Mm-hmm. There are discussions like that. There is a focus on breath because it's symbolic of the whole of life and life coming to an end.
Sure. So why do grievers sometimes feel that the world has gone colorless, that they can't actually see the colors in the world? Do they describe that to you?
Do they want that to you?
Have they described, have grievers described the world to be colorless?
Yes. It hasn't been as common as just the weight of it that they talk about. But yes, it seems as if various things sort of represent the fullness of life, and metaphors and others are used to describe the disappearance of profoundly important aspects of what it is to be alive. And when the color goes out of the world, some are saying that metaphorically, and some are saying literally. It's getting dark. It's getting drab. Mm-hmm. It feels like the world is shutting down.
Sure. Well, what we do at Feinberg Consulting, we often see families and meet them where the exact moment you describe when someone says, "I don't even recognize my life," and that when not recognizing their life, they've already been identified as in the life with the person. From your perspective, how can caregivers and clinicians best honor that shocked, breathless state without trying to fix it?
And if it's a person that you ordinarily touch, a touch on the hand, a touch on the shoulder, a kiss on the cheek, a wiping of the brow, those things would be helpful. Just I'm here with you, and affirming that. And sometimes their eyes have closed, and so on. Holding a hand firmly without crushing it, and so on, is also another way of just affirming that they're not alone as this transition is, in their experience, underway. Mm-hmm. And wishing them well as they're going is not a bad thing to do either.
And much of our work involves sitting with families and grieving collectively, yet very differently. And each person in a family will grieve differently. How did listening to many stories over the time that you've worked and written books shape your understanding of grief in that rather than resolving it?
It started when I was very small. My father was one of 10, and my mother was one of 9.
Oh, wow.
And my dad was about 20 years older than my mom. So his family that lived in the farmlands of the Midwest and never really came to the city where we lived in Chicago. We didn't go and visit very often, and they didn't come and visit very often because neither end could afford that kind of travel. So letters would be sent, especially when someone was sick and dying or when they had died. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was 4 or 5 years old, and letters started coming in that I noticed. And my mother, unlike a lot of mothers or fathers who might have protected me from the letters and so on, thought that what a mother should do and what a wife should do is open the letter and read it to the entire family. Mm. So very early, I was introduced to all kinds of dimensions of suffering at the end of life and the stories of the dying. Some were quite touching, some were quite graphic. I remember I had a cousin on Dad's side who came and visited once, and he'd been in a combine accident and lost part of one of his arms. And I thought, wow, this is really eye-opening. And a few years later, he died in a combine accident.
Oh, wow.
He was combined to death. So,
and they described that in a
I'm a
letter?
young kid, and my mother's reading letters with all kinds of details. And I thought that's what families did. And I found the stories sad and so on. I was taken to funerals when I was very young. Some of my earliest memories are of attending funerals where the minister didn't know the person who had died and told stories about that person, nevertheless, that did not fit with the character of Uncle Arnold that I knew. So I asked my mother, why is he talking about this guy? Should he be talking about Arnold and telling some of his stories and so on? Anyway, I became familiar early. By the time I was young, preteen, or maybe teenager, my friends were kind of used to me as someone that could be talked to about things that were hard. So I heard some stories from young teenagers and so on about what was happening in their lives, and in some cases, some deaths. And I just became familiar. I went off to graduate school, decided I wanted to be a teacher. I knew I wanted to be a teacher most of my life, and eventually settled on philosophy and went off to graduate school. And family members continued to die at a somewhat increasing pace. My mother's family started dying. When I was in graduate school, my father died, and he was 73. He died. He was born in 1896.
Wow.
Just incidentally, my grandfather, his father, was born in 1859, before the American Civil War. That's
incredible.
So my family is spread out a little bit on Dad's side. Anyway, when Dad died, I had no idea I was ever going to teach about death and dying, but I was used to talking to people. When I was driving back to my graduate school location in St. Louis, I wanted to find a philosopher to talk to. And I was on the receiving end of the teachings of a large faculty. And for the life of me, I could not identify any one of those faculty members that I wanted to talk to. I was a little afraid or intimidated of some that I didn't know very well. And others just seemed a bit formal or kind of wary themselves of talking about some of these things. And I swore to myself, I didn't know what I was going to teach yet, but I said, philosophers do best when they think with other people. The earliest Greek philosophers were known for walking through gardens and talking to one another, and so on. And I swore, okay, I'm going to be one of these people. I'm going to be the kind of philosopher that people will talk to. And that has happened. The school where I was teaching founded a new college while I was there in my early years there. After about 3 years, there was a new College of Health and Human Services, featuring programs in nursing, gerontology, social work, child and family development.
Well, your work was well needed there.
Well, it was, and my colleagues were starting to do what they called and we called applied philosophy, and they taught courses in medical ethics and philosophy of law and philosophy of punishment and business ethics and environmental ethics and so on. And I had been teaching ethics for the first couple of years. They had me working for them, and I thought, my students pick the issues we're going to talk about in these ethics classes, and a lot of them have to do with death and dying. That gave me the idea that I could maybe teach a course on death and dying. They approved the course, and on the way to delivering it, I had second thoughts about focusing on ethics, because I didn't think that these people were going to on a daily basis be facing ethical issues. Sometimes, yes, but not all the time. So ethics can be part of the course, but it's got to be more about being a human being, living a finite life, and how do you find meaning and integrity in doing it, and how do you care for people who are struggling with those challenges. And I vowed that I would ask my students to write about their experiences and reflect on their experiences rather than just abstract cogitating. And I had one particular exercise where I asked them to talk about their 3 most important loss experiences in their life and write little essays on each of those. I read hundreds, if not thousands, within the first few years. And I found that no one was talking about going through 5 stages of anything.
I was going to say, I in nursing school, my death and dying class really was focused on the stages of grief in Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And that's all that was taught at that time, and probably much about what is taught now, too.
Well, it's a mistake.
Yeah.
It works for stages of dying where there's a lot of apprehension, misapprehension, and above all, uncertainty. Am I really dying or not? Have the doctors got it right or not? What does this symptom mean? Is this a sign that things are progressing or not? And there's this incredible uncertainty, which leaves your ego with lots of room to say, no, it's not really happening. I'm going to leave that aside. I'm not going to bother with it. And then things persist and get a bit worse and so on. And at some point, people may turn to the second stage, anger. Damn it, get out of my life. No, this is not happening. I refuse to believe it, and all this agitation. And then there's, it still seems to be getting worse. And then you get bargaining. Maybe there's some things I can do, changes I can make, pleas I can make, and so on, and make it so this doesn't have to happen, or something that's milder happens, but I don't lose my life. And then people get to a point where they say, they say to themselves, this is really happening. Oh, crap. My usual defenses don't work. And you're really in a tough spot. And then finally you come around to acceptance, which is supposedly the end of it all. And when people then say there are 5 stages of grieving, I couldn't do those 5 that I just did. It doesn't work, and nobody ever talks about those. There's a fellow named David Kessler right now who wrote a book with Kubler-Ross where they said it really applies to grief too. And I sat in an audience and listened to him explain this, and it was transparent that what was at stake was what egos do to try to control things
as you were describing those stages, which I'm familiar with, but as you were describing them, there are many things in life: a divorce, loss of a marriage, loss of or transition, any transitions in life, actually, not just death and dying.
Yeah, where there's uncertainty and ambiguity and iffiness, and am I up to it, and do I have any control, and what kind of control do I have, or how do I live without having control? Those are issues at stake while there's dying taking place. There's no ambiguity when you have a dead person in a bed who just died in a hospital room.
Sure.
She's dead. He's dead. Okay.
Yeah.
And in ordinary life, when we deal with problems in life, our egos are up to it. We know how to control things. We know how to plan things. We know how to take decisive action. We know how to change our minds and go in another direction when it feels like we have to. And we know how to complete tasks, finish the job on whatever it is we're wanting to do, be done with it and move on to something else, and so on. And a person's dying is not that kind of thing.
Sure.
So when you get to a point when you're actually dealing with a death having taken place, you realize that your ordinary way of solving ordinary everyday problems isn't going to work. Mm-hmm. Don't have control here. You don't have choice here. Part of the worst of grieving is feeling helpless.
Yeah, breaking down that ego for sure.
Yeah, and that's what egos do. They feel helpless when they can't control or solve or manage or get beyond whatever is distressing them. And I've written, among other things, about the difference between problems and mysteries. And sometime today we can talk about those a little bit. I think what's happening when you're up against death is that you're up against fundamental mysteries in life. And when we experience them, they change us. Mm-hmm. We don't change them.
Sure.
And we have to learn how to live with that if we're going to be successful.
What can you say to people who are grieving or other people who are surrounding them, that the pressure of feeling like, let's get over it, you need to move on in your life? What do you say to someone like that?
Well, I'll do it with you.
Okay.
And our audience, people who are listening in, some simple questions to ask. I'll get to where it really needs to go, but we'll take a couple of steps to get there. Mm-hmm. I have a bunch of them with me, or we have them with us today. It's like it's an auditorium here. And I ask people to raise their hands if they feel as if they've finished learning how to live. They've got nothing more to learn.
Absolutely not.
Nobody raises their hand at that. That's interesting.
I just went into a cave for the first time last weekend in Tulum, Mexico. I am not done.
So then I have this view that grieving is a process of relearning how to live in the world, because the world's changed dramatically. If learning how to live in the world is a lifelong thing, isn't it plausible to think that grieving, as relearning how to live in the world, never finishes? Let's think about living in separation. I think the end in view in successful grieving isn't sitting in a stew of sadness and loneliness and despair. It's loving in separation.
And how does someone do that?
Next set of questions.
Were we done with processing the other? I know that you were.
You all came to hear this podcast today, and I'm hypothesizing that we're all sitting in a studio together or an auditorium. And I ask you, how many of you, when you came to the podcast today, including the podcast moderator, how many of you brought every person who is alive and well in your life now with you when you came today? Anybody? You could introduce, if I were in the studio with you, you could have me shake hands with every person you know and love who's still alive, who came to see you today or be with us today. Anybody? No. All right. Here's a key question. When you came, did you stop loving them?
No.
Do you have suspicions that they stopped loving you?
No.
That means everybody you know and love who's alive right now is loving you, though they're not with you. We all know how to love in separation. We do it all the time. How do we do it? Well, right now we're talking about all the people you love and care about, and you're remembering little bits of them. So you're thinking of them coming to the studio or not, or what they're doing right now. We remember one another far more often and steadily than we're actually perceiving and looking at one another or hearing one another, and so on. We're imagining what they might say if they would speak right now about this guy that you've got in that studio today. I don't know, or geez, he's raising interesting questions, or what you can imagine what different people in your life would think about, or how they would react if they were with us today. we do that almost constantly with people in our lives. There's no reason you can't do that if they've died.
Well, when you raise these points, my heart is flooded with love for the people that I know that are not with me. So you did speak in your book about how to continue to love them in their separation of death and someone continuing. See, I'm getting teary-eyed thinking about it, but
it's what we do,
right.
And it's what we can do. I think when we get into serious grieving, the agony of it all and the pain of being separated and missing blocks out our capacity to embrace them in other conscious experiences and memories of them, because the present hurt is what it is. And it's intense, it's gripping. We have to figure out ways of loosening the grip and so on. And I think when we ask ourselves some of the questions like the ones I've just been asking, we can see how, all right, let's talk for just a minute about 6 weeks or 6 months after your mother has died and she's been very dear to you, and so on. By then, you've had hundreds of reminders that she's not here, and many of them can be painful. Eventually, when you have an experience 100 times, it lessens in its intensity, even if it still comes back, and so on. And as the intensity lessens, other experiences can find their way into the experiencing you're having. So I would say it would be unlikely that a couple of weeks after someone has died, you're comfortable in remembering everything and laughing and chuckling about the stories you share and so on. 6 months, a lot more chance. 6 years, very likely that you'll be talking about mom or dad or whoever it is. Much more like when you talk about them and they're just off in another room or the like. And they want you to be able to do that. And the thing about the grip of grief is most people who die don't want any one of their survivors to be gripped so they can't remember comfortably, so they can't laugh about what mom used to say, so they can't remember how much mom moved them in the direction in life that turned out to be a good one for them, or blessed their marriage, or was great with their kids, saved up enough so they could have piano lessons or so they could go off to university. So we remember them. We can be grateful for all kinds of things. Their inspiration, their encouragement, their instruction, their softness and gentleness, their loving, their kindness, their insight, anything they shared with us that we cherish, other than their physical presence, we still have. And if you can get to that point, then you can move from sorrow to an experience that's more and more grateful. And when you're in gratitude, if that isn't a loving thing, I don't know what is.
Sure.
And that's where I like to hope that people can be helped to move. And some people have obstacles that make it quite tough to make that kind of move. But it's what the person who died, in all likelihood, would want for them. And if they didn't want that, there was something pretty sour in the relationship that will be an additional thing for them to wrestle with, to get by the neglect, the hurt, the hardship, the terrible arguments, all kinds of bad memories, and so on. You have other work to deal with than getting to a point where you can still love what's lovable about the person who's died. Does this make sense?
That's absolutely, and that's part of work in traumas too. Before someone dies, if you can do that, if not, continue that work, because you may have had an abusive relationship traumatized things that happened, that
Yes.
letting go of that story, of being able to hold on to whatever you felt about that person and accepting them for in the circumstances as you in any way that you can to work through for yourself, as because you're the one that's still living.
And I think there are good relationships and bad relationships. And some relationships are terrible. And I think one of the things about terrible relationships is it can look as if there's nothing there to be grateful for, nothing to hold on to. And I think you get to bottom lines when you're talking with people who've had that kind of horrible experience. And you wouldn't be alive if it weren't for that abusive father or mother.
Sure.
At least give credit for that and let go of all the rest if that's what you need to do, and let's work on it together.
Right. Absolutely. And hopefully it can be worked out. I mean, obviously you have the grief to work through as well. So that's what you call a complicated grief, right?
Yeah, but I wrote a thing about complicated grief, and it's in the little book we're here about. And there is a typical reading in cultures like ours where people read complication as a medical complication, as a psychological, as a malady, sort of exacerbation of one sort or another. And complicated simply means complex, multifaceted, and there's no grief that isn't complex or complicated in that sense. And I'm weary of people talking about complication in grief because it suggests that there's a lot more deep psychological or even physiological problematic in it. Its complexity tends not to be that usually. There's some, but complex things are things that can be dealt with one at a time, patiently, repeatedly if necessary, and so on. And there's nothing wrong with someone who's dealing with something complex. Just talk to the people who figured out how to make an atomic bomb. That was complex, but it wasn't complicated and complicated, but it wasn't complicated in the sense of having anything to do with a malady.
Sure. So can you explain your signature idea of grief as relearning how to live in the world?
I'd find that too complicated. Yeah, I think I can.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing a little humor here.
Well,
I needed a little laugh here.
I'll spread out on some of the complication. One of the things you have to do when you're grieving, if you've been living closely, say, with a family member who has died, you and those who survive with you have to relearn how to be together in a social complex, a family, a friendship organization of one sort or another, where a major player is no longer there. And people have all these different roles that they play in friendships, in families, and so on. And someone playing a major role is no longer available to do all the physical things, the everyday things, the special event things, and so on that any participant in a family or social unit. So you have to adjust, and huge adjustments take place within families and friendship circles or small communities. And you have to also enter into and prepare to enter into the next chapters of your life that will not have a major player on the scene. So all those chapters are going to be different. And some people live in very complex situations, some in dyads, and it's a big loss when the other member of the dyad dies. So you probably change your whole way of living in that little house that you had for the two of you. in everyday living. You divided up the responsibilities and the labors and the loves and the expressions and the consolations and so on in a family of two.
Mm-hmm.
And it can feel, I think, for in couples, especially aging couples, and so on, where their worlds have shrunk.
Sure.
And social networks and families have, in some cases, shrunk considerably. I've just been imagining recently, because I'm getting old enough, so the possibility is real in my life. What's it going to be like if my wife predeceases me? Or what's it going to be like for her if I happen to die first? And when you're a couple living into later years where the rest of the families are spread out and no longer close at hand, and your friendship networks are dying, and so on, you do get the inklings of feelings that you might be nearly alone when your partner dies, and that's a daunting prospect. It's been interesting for us. People have been noticing us a little bit, and they say, best thing you can do is hang around with younger people. Well, younger is getting to be pretty old right now. So,
sometimes that those gaps go wider and wider and wider depending on how late in life you live. What about the couple, or not even the couple, the family that has someone who has Alzheimer's or any kind of dementia, and slowly they're seeing their loved one change into the respect that they're really no longer there in what they used to be? That's also grieving.
Well, absolutely. I said my mother was one of 9. They all lived in the Chicago area. None of them are with us any longer. In contrast with my dad's family, where I'm not aware of there having been any cases of dementia. In my mother's family, one died too early for dementia because she did not want to be examined by a doctor, so she held out too long, and her cancer killed her in her 50s. Everybody else made it as late as 98. I think they all made it into their 80s, and 3 of them made it into their 90s. And I think all but one had dementia.
Oh, wow.
Including my mother. So I've had quite a bit of experience with people I love dying with dementia, and watching people struggling with the caregiving that sometimes became quite onerous. But I think they were all pretty well taken care of in facilities, with their spouses supported in the loneliness of losing a close partner. There's nothing quite like it. We could probably talk the rest of the morning about that if you want to. But I found in my case, all I could do, say with my grandmother, was meet her where she was. And I wasn't responsible for taking care of her physically, but collectively the family wanted to make sure she was well taken care of. She wound up living with my mother after my dad died, until she died. And part of it was entertaining because she was just goofy sometimes.
Some of that is entertaining, and then others is just really sad, and then others is just painful because there's abusiveness and anger and fighting, and it's just
kind of desperation that comes to be semi-pervasive. Grandma was pretty good. I think a couple of my uncles were pretty angry men before they died with their dementia. I remember my mother's last birthday party, and we all got together in a restaurant. We took her out of the nursing home she was staying in, and brought her to this restaurant, and there were 3 or 4 of her siblings and some of us cousins, and we got to Applebee's an hour early for lunch, so 11 o'clock, before the place was crowding up, and we recognized we were all going to be a little bit noisy, and there was a lot of conversation, and then we had some lunch, and by then it was noon, and the place was full, and my German uncles and aunts, some of whom had strong voices, decided they wanted to sing in the restaurant.
At noon at Applebee's.
They were good. My aunt was contralto in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra Club, and my uncle Bill had been in choirs, just men's choirs. They would sing in nursing homes and places like that for about 40 years. And the highlight of that day was when Billy, that's Uncle Bill, was asked to sing a solo, and the whole restaurant was just, what's happening? Who are these people? Why are they doing this? This is very entertaining. And Billy sang Alexander's Ragtime Band with a Polish accent, and got a standing ovation in the in the restaurant. It was wonderful. And we went back with Mom to her place, and the nursing home had set aside a room for us all together. And it was simple. You could see her enjoying herself and what she wanted to do, and they were ready for her to do it, was blow up balloons and hit them in the air. And we did that for a full half hour. And we loved it because she loved it.
She was having a good time.
Where she needed to be, doing what she was doing, feeling safe, comforted, and encouraged. And that's my picture of my mother's last birthday. And it's a good one. And we weren't trying to do things that couldn't be done. And we're trying to find things that she would like to do.
Sure.
And we were confident that she was well taken care of physically when she needed to be, and so on. There was a do not resuscitate order on her, and my Aunt Gertie was nearby. So she was called when Mom started to bleed one night, and there was a do not resuscitate order, and Gertie reinforced it. And so my mother bled out one night after living with dementia for 4 or 5 years, I think, at the end of her life. It wasn't easy, but to the extent that it could be supported, it was fully. And she was never desperate. And it seemed like about the best you could do.
So what you're saying for families is try, as you said, meet them where they are, not try to have them do things to your level, but meet them where they are, to have the best memories that you can in supporting them through the process, and will provide you some good memories as well in any of the grieving that you would have.
I remember seeing it coming, seeing how she was slipping and getting confused, and I was calling from a distance often, and she had 2 sons, John and Tom, and I would call, and she'd say, "Which one of you is this?" And I would say, "This is Philip, Mom. You always forget me." And she says, "Oh, Tom, you're just joking." And when she no longer corrected me, I knew she'd taken another step. And I never told her that I was Philip or brought her back to that stage, but it was a measure of, she still has some good cognition here, and she can sort out what's really happening from what's not. That helped me, actually. I knew she was in trouble, but I knew she was mostly succeeding in connecting with the world. And then there was that point where she was really disconnecting, and you had to change how you helped and how you wanted to get help from other people helping her and get her. Well, she placed herself in a good facility.
Oh, really? Wow.
And it turned, when she was living alone and was afraid for her health and had fallen a couple of times, and she called places and went to look at them.
That's unusual.
Decided to sell her home and go there while she could still socialize with people and become friends with some. She said, "I've got to do this. This is what makes sense, and I can have my friends come visit me there as well as they can visit me here." And we were so grateful that she was still able to think through that kind of problem set, rather than having to be kind of pushed into making some decisions that at that point she was afraid of or the like. So I've had those experiences are not wonderful, and there are things that are quite sad about them, but there are still little indicators that this is the same person who's just compromised in abilities, and she took care of me when I couldn't say a word. If she can't say a word anymore, we'll take care of her.
Sure. What do you call you? I'm going to go back to when you said we can talk about mysteries.
Well, that's easy. But I think I'm about the only person in the death and dying field talking about the difference between problems and mysteries, and just how important it is. And I don't think scientists do very well in identifying what mysteries are. But I think one of the advantages of my having become a philosopher is that I can see that there are differences and profound differences in challenges that the world presents to us. We were talking a while ago about egos, solving problems, meeting everyday challenges, the kinds of problems that you can put a list on the refrigerator door, or put them on a list and take them out and go shopping, and you tick them off and you're done with them. You finished the task. The challenge has been met. You had to find this grade of cream with 18% milk fat in it, and so on. And the 12% won't work, and the 32% won't work. And we solve problems like that. Problems are challenges that can be met entirely, finished with, completed. What's the effort that's required of you is manageable, controllable, completable, and so on. There are other challenges in life that are distinct in that they can't be controlled. Maybe manipulated a little bit, but not decisively controlled, not over a lifetime, not controlled. And the difference is, in response to mysteries, we have to change ourselves. So getting a dozen eggs from the store, that's a problem. Getting the tire fixed on the car, that's a problem. Saving up enough money to pay for a first year of a college education, that's a problem. These things are doable, solvable. Okay? Love is a mystery.
Right.
It calls upon us to do various things in life, as various things have been happening to those we love, or in relationships with those we love. Death is a mystery. Grieving is a mystery. Suffering is a mystery. Friendship is a mystery. Parenting is filled with mysteries. All right. And
grandparenting as well.
Pardon?
Being a grandparent as well is a mystery.
Yes. Parenting, well, being a son is a mystery. Being a daughter is a mystery. Being a wife is a mystery. Being a husband is, being in a love relationship is filled with mystery, filled with indecisiveness, filled with incompleteness, filled with complication that's ineradicable, and so on. And I think when people realize, when they're supporting people who are grieving, that there aren't any decisive, conclusive answers to the challenges you're facing, the depth of you is called into question and called into action. You can be supported, you can be advised, you can be counseled, you can even be directed, and so on. But ultimately, how it comes out is a function of you're doing the best that you can from a limited perspective with limited information and considerable pressure to deal with it now and not later. And if people aren't recognizing the difference between problems and mysteries, they'll expect too much of themselves, or they'll underestimate the weight and complexity of the challenge that they're dealing with, and they can over-expect themselves to be successful, and they can be unforgiving, where if there's ever situations where forgiveness is in order, it's what you're doing when you're trying to figure out how to live your life meaningfully. That's not a problem. I mean, you can't talk to a counselor and come away with a three-part formula and I've got to do number one, number two, or number three. This is easy. I can live my life the rest of the way. There will be new complexities that will present themselves, and that three-pronged list isn't going to do the job.
Sure.
And I think some people find it daunting that we have to deal with mysteries on a regular basis. But it's also viewable in other ways. I mean, it's an adventure. The greatest adventurers have, when they sailed out on the ocean blue and they didn't have equipment to tell them where they were on the ocean blue, and they sailed nevertheless successfully to another continent.
That was a mystery for sure.
they were floating on the sea of mystery on the way to Japan, and you accidentally hit it when they got there. I find it exciting to recognize that we're limited beings, and there's excitement in living a limited life. And of course, there's disappointment and all the rest, but there's a richness and adventure and contending with mysteries calls out the best of you, calls out the deepest reaches of your heart and soul and spirit.
Sure.
And when you get good at loving, for example, that's something that's almost more exciting than any other possibility in living a human life. And it can bring heartache as well as joy. I mean, think of the loving a child that you've just brought into the world and raising that child. Lots of pain, lots of sorrow, lots of heartache, lots of wonder, lots of mystery, lots of intrigue, lots of challenge, lots of calling out the best in you on a regular basis and expressing it and trying to develop more of it and so on. That's the heart of living, it seems to me.
Sure, absolutely. So many people think grief is simply the pain that hits us when someone dies. What's missing from that view?
Most encounters with things in this world involve, and this is psychological stuff, this is a terminology that's used. We react to things that happen to us and in our lives. And what I mean by reaction, it's like knee-jerk reaction. It's like blinking when a bright light flashes in your. You don't deliberately do these things. They happen in you. Reactions are what happens to us in our experiences. And most reactions are in more global experiences that also involve what we do with what happens to us. And those are responses. Mm-hmm. And my reading of the history of people thinking about grieving is an awful lot of it has been concentrated on what happens to us when someone dies, how we react, how we spontaneously emote, we cry, or our knees go weak, or we faint and sigh, we lose our appetites, we become inept at raising our children or doing our work or driving a car. We become a hazard to others in some cases. That's been the emphasis up until I would say the 70s or 80s in writings about grief and loss. Freud talked about all kinds of things that come over us, and we try to dissipate what's come over us. And that's all we do in response. But doing in response is, in lots of ways, choice-filled, whereas what hits us that makes us react, we don't have any choice about. We couldn't have prevented that death, et cetera, et cetera. Well, special complications if you could have prevented it, but you didn't. All right. But how we respond is how we express what we're thinking about what's happened, how we choose to reshape the world in response to, in attempts to take it in, make something positive out of it, learn from it, stop the flow of it. So, that's what a lot of people do. Give me some heavy alcohol and I won't feel this pain anymore. And that's almost a reaction. Sure. But there's a little bit of action involved in choosing to do that. But it's almost that same problem mystery thing, not quite. But I think I probably said what I want to say. I think that in the last 40 years or so, there's been a lot more talk about grief as involving responses. Mm-hmm. And there's a large club of folks who talk about what we tell ourselves about what has happened to ourselves, mm-hmm. and how we reshape the narratives of our lives and try to get ourselves on a better path into the future than it has seemed in the last couple of months I'm going on. I'm strong enough now. I'm not going to just live in terms of these reactions. I'm going to try something new, or I'm going to reach out to a different counselor, or I'm going to make some promises to myself and try to meet them and the like. And that is constructive response as opposed to passive reaction. And I think it's important for people who are being counseled, or if you're reaching out to a friend and so on, help them to see the choices that they have in what seems like a choiceless situation. Sure. And help them to deal with the limitations of their choices that they encounter, work around them, spread out to other options that are still possible. And a simple thing like you can't sit down and hold mom's hand and have a conversation, but you can bring mom to mind and remember the last time you had a conversation. And, if I could go back and ask her now, what would I ask her? Oh, I wonder what she'd say. All right, you're wondering about what she'd say. Try to imagine what she would say. Or do that with a friend and say, could you be my mom this afternoon? And we'll have a conversation and see where we go. Or my counselor.
Sure.
I think it would help if you could be my mother for the next 20 minutes, and I'll ask you some questions that are really affecting me. And so things like that are responsive rather than just reactive.
Sure.
And there's a pool of responses out there that's probably got some pretty good stuff in it for you.
Across your decades of work, what wisdom for living and for grieving has stayed with you the most?
This is the book that got us together today.
Yeah.
This is called Seeking Wisdom in Death's Shadows.
I do have it here too.
Good. And what happens in there is there's a kind of intellectual autobiography by me. And the early going is how it is that I became interested in stories and how I became interested in cultivating wisdom as opposed to pursuing scientific answers to questions that are susceptible to answer. I early on in my life realized that we don't live more or less scientifically. We live more or less wisely. And I got onto the idea that I'd like to hang around with people who seek wisdom. And eventually, as I've told you, I wound up teaching philosophy and I wound up teaching death and dying. And what you have in this book is early writings on through to writings I did last year before the book was published. There are 14 kind of classic Attig articles, and then there are 9 new pieces in here. So you get the early versions of things like the relearning the world idea developed. You get the early ideas of, say, the nature of the self is more like a web than like an atom, and how we're part of a web of webs that holds everything that there is, and we're fed along lines of nourishment and strength as long as we live, and we issue some of our own for people that we love. And when someone dies, our grief experience is not of someone disappearing from nearby, but there's no effect on us. We're like a web, and a major figure disappears from that web. So the web can't be what it was, but we reweave the pattern in our life and reweave where that development of the web is going. All of that sort of develops through the pages here. And then there's a last part where there are articles or essays on a dozen good things about grieving, since people tend to look at there are so many bad things about it, so much pain, so much hardship, so much brokenness. And the last thing that I write about is, I guess, my personal wisdom for living and respecting the difference between problems and mysteries is one bit of wisdom there. And thinking of ourselves as webs as opposed to atoms floating in space. This is bereavement. When you think of us as self-contained atoms, nothing happened. It's just, this is gone. That's not the way it is.
Right, for sure.
It penetrates to the heart of you. The thing that I did when I had been teaching about grief and loss and death and dying for 7 or 8 years, I got a little bit of a reputation on campus. And somebody in a dormitory said, we're doing this set of talks by professors. Let's ask this Attig guy who's teaching about death and dying to come and talk with us. And what they wanted us all to do was offer last lectures. Give a talk that would be what you would want to talk about if this was your last chance to talk to an audience about what matters most to you.
Wow.
The person who preceded me talked about television advertising. I found that remarkable for a human being, but there it was. Okay, anyway, I took the assignment seriously. I've been collecting quotations and cartoons and thoughts about living a human life in like a shoebox. And I took them out and I tried to organize them. And I put together a talk that I call Fragile Humanity, Handle with Care. And I had 4 questions that I highlighted, and I said, you don't really want to be answering these questions in a certain way. You will live an unhappy life. Work toward affirming that these are okay. The 4 questions are, is it okay to be small and insignificant when you look at the great scale of things? Mm-hmm. Is it okay to be impermanent? Because you are. You're not going to be here very long, and no one ever is. Is that okay? Is it okay to suffer? Because that's coming.
Right.
And is it okay to be uncertain or to not know, even the stuff you want to know the most? And I said to the audience, these are very important questions, and they're about profoundly important aspects of who we are as human beings. And I asked whether these things are important or not, or satisfactory, okay. If you are living your life as if you were trying to say no in response to any one of those 4, you're going to wind up in a counselor's office. Mm-hmm. You're going to wind up seeking help for the problems that come out of trying to say no to a profoundly important central aspect of who you are as a human being.
Sure.
And I'm sitting there when I give this thing in Arkansas. That was second time I gave it. And half the room is counseling psychologists and nurse practitioners and professors of this, that, and the other thing. And they're all going, oh, yeah, those are the people who come into my office. Yep, he's got that right. It's just, it is the way it is. And I think the way I treat that just in a few pages in that last chapter is one of the best little bits I've ever come up with. I've tried it with audiences in different places and so on. And people say, you know, if you really are trying to live while you're saying to yourself, it's completely unacceptable to be finite, you're going to be a very unhappy person.
Sure. There's so much wisdom,
a little bit of wisdom.
So much wisdom, as you say, seeking wisdom, so much wisdom in that. For obviously they were in school, so they're pretty young. They may have been, medical students, but still young. Yeah. And for them to be in the medical field and hear that is profound, because they can be better physicians, nurses, psychologists, counselors, because that's inevitable, that's what's going to happen in our field, is to watch this and to have that ability to accept all of it.
And we can support people as they wrestle with the difficult edges of those limits. But all the good that can ever be lived is lived within those limits. The realities of what's possible for a human being are all realized within those limits. And they're huge limits, even though you wind up living a finite life. I've been around a long time. I mean, it feels like it, but every day is pretty short. So I have something I'd like to sort of add here. I've written books with Oxford, and this one that you have in your hand is written with Oxford. And Oxford has an offer for everyone who hears this, or everyone who learns of this through whatever means you use to communicate with them. They want to have people go to the Oxford University website at global.oup.com and order the book and press the thing that says go to cart. And when you get there, enter a code word, AUFLY 30. I'll repeat that, AUFLY 30. And they'll give you 30% off on the book.
Oh, wow. Very nice. Well,
And,
I hope that we have a lot of listeners.
I love everybody who's listening to this.
I wish I had known that before I purchased the book, this is very rich, and I'm so glad that I did purchase it, because it is something that you can keep coming back to, and just some amazing richness in this book, and amazing richness in our conversation. I appreciate having you on this podcast, and I certainly hope that people will listen and order the book.
If you could pass the word along, even to the people who didn't hear the podcast.
Yeah, sure.
Again, that code is AUFLY 30 at the Oxford University Press website. It's the best thing I've ever done, and people tell me I've done some good things, so I feel very good about it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on and talking about so much here. Thank you for joining the conversation today. If you are seeking help for yourself or a loved one, please reach out to our Feinberg Consulting team at 248-538-5425. That's 248-538-5425, and check out our website at feinbergcare.com. I'm grateful for our guests and all who have joined us today. Make sure you follow us on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts.